Before we start this video, I want to say sorry for the background noise. I'm shooting in the daytime again and it kind of gets loud on my road. This channel has been built up on talking about and reviewing older phones to see if they're any good in 2019 or 2020 or 2018 or whenever it was. And as I mentioned recently in the Redmi Note 8 review, that's starting to change, and that's sort of something that I can't really say anymore. I can't say that you should go out and buy a used phone, like a used flagship, in terms of performance and price per performance compared to a lower end or maybe mid-range phone from 2020 or 2019, because they're just very, very different things. Today I'm going to be talking about why you shouldn't buy a flagship, whether that be old or new, and you should just buy a modern mid-range or even a low-end phone because they're just that good these days. Let's first talk about the physical build, the physical design. It used to be that the higher end stuff was more kind of metal and glass, and the mid-range stuff was plastic. Well, that's completely changed now, and most mid-range phones are glass sandwiches of some kind, with usually a metal rail around the outside, if not a plastic one. It might not have the kind of IP rating or the mil-spec certification, but what it does have, it tends to be fairly good water and dust resistance anyway, even if it's not certified, because of the use of rubber gaskets around the outside and really well sealed kind of chassis. So that may impact being able to repair your device, taking glass things apart. However, in reality, when most people actually don't take their phone apart, it works out as a positive because you have better longevity. Secondly, performance. It used to be the omission of UHD 4K video recording and higher resolution screens and stuff like that never used to be part of the lower end or mid-range chipsets, such as the Snapdragon 625 and so on. Whereas nowadays, most modern mid-range chipsets can shoot UHD 24 or 30p video. They can have support for higher end 1080p or Quad HD displays. There's a lot more going for mid-range chipsets, and this is before we even talk about performance, whether you're playing games or browsing social media or doing whatever you do in your day-to-day life. Tends to be that mid-range chips are still just as good because they can keep up with those higher end chipsets in terms of gaming, mainly because the device's screens aren't Quad HD and they do tend to be Full HD plus. It's kind of like they're running parallel with each other. Now, no, they're not quite neck and neck, and you are still going to be able to get more performance out of high-end chipsets, and obviously you pay for that, but you don't really need the high-end chipsets most of the time. Another thing is that the mid-range phones tend to have more features, whether that be USB-C, some at 3.0, some at 2.0 speeds, a headphone port, IR blaster, microSD expansion, dual SIM support, a physical fingerprint reader. A lot of mid-range phones have these advantages over their higher-end counterparts. One of my favourite mid-range devices, if not my favourite overall, has to be the Xiaomi Mi 9T, which I did a review on for Android Authority. It's just such a good phone and it has so many good features for the price. But one of the main areas in which mid-range phones would fail in the past has to be in the camera department. Now, I'm not saying that all mid-range phones have brilliant cameras, because a lot of them don't, but a lot of them use the IMX586 sensor from Sony, which is a 48 megapixel sensor, pixel bin down to 12 megapixels. Pretty much every mid-range phone these days has a variation of that, whether it be the 582 or something that maybe doesn't support 60p video recording. There's something there. And what usually goes along with that is an ultra-wide or wide-angle camera from around mid-2019 and onwards. That means that you're getting the ultra-wide and the main camera, and the main camera tends to be kind of software limited, so what you can do is port over Google's HDR Plus camera app and get some even better images. In fact, in my opinion, a lot of the stock camera apps that come with Xiaomi, Huawei and Realme phones have pretty decent colours built into them these days. Nothing like before where, most of the companies used to crank up the saturation, crank up the contrast. Nowadays, they've kind of learnt to be a little bit more natural, more neutral, and I think that kind of makes for a better image. It's something you see in a lot of flagships. And let's not forget that all smartphones across the board, lower end, high end, extreme, they've doubled in price in just 4 years. A flagship Samsung Galaxy S7 Edge, which was the best you could get at the time, was about £650, and now an S10 Plus is around £1,000, which is absolutely crazy. And it kind of goes down to the low end as well. Like low end and mid-range phones, like a good mid-range phone is like £300 or £400. Well, years and years ago in 2016, the OnePlus 3 started at £309, and that was the fastest phone around, which is pretty crazy. Now, there are some exceptions, namely the Realme X2 Pro, which I absolutely love. I think it's a brilliant phone, and if you haven't seen my review on Android Authority, you should check that out. What I really like about that phone is that it packs 12GB of RAM, an 855 Plus, crazy battery stuff, and a 90Hz screen, all into a package that is around €500. Now, that may sound like a lot if you've been living under a rock since 2016, where flagships used to be around that price. But in today's day and age, where there's just so many £1,000 phones, a phone that costs just €500 that has all those specs is really good. But it's still not very cheap. I definitely wouldn't call it a mid-ranger. It's definitely a flagship. So we're talking about things that are around £250 to £300, mainly because that's the more affordable route. I've been talking about buying on eBay for the past couple of years, and I understand that a lot of people don't really like buying used phones. I've recently had a couple of kind of bigger exceptions to my rule where I say you should buy used, they're brilliant. There have been a couple of pretty bad purchases that I've made that I've had to kind of send back and get a refund. But with that all in mind, you kind of have to go for a new mid-ranger. Buying a new flagship is so expensive these days. It's crazy. And as I've alluded to kind of at the start of this video, you don't need a flagship. Mainly because all of the parts that were in kind of flagships maybe 6 months to a year ago have trickled down into mid-rangers just 6 months or a year later, which I thought may have taken like 2 or 3 years, but taking that shorter time to trickle down into the lower end section of the market is brilliant, and it works for us, people who don't have that much money. But despite all of what I've talked about today and the fact that I do recommend you go out and buy a new mid-ranger over an old flagship, I'm still going to explore them. I'm still going to explore the older phones because they are really fun to look back at, and a lot of them are phones that I never got to check out when they were first available or first popular because I didn't have the money, and now that they've come down in price I can kind of afford them a little bit more, such as things that I really want to check out this year include the original Pixel 1 again. I thought that was a brilliant phone. The OnePlus X, which I did try to get and then it broke and I had to send it back. The OnePlus 1, OnePlus 2, the Samsung Note series like the Note 2, the Note 3, the LG G5. There are heaps of phones I'd love to check out this year, and I really hope I get the chance to do so. And they're not practical phones to buy this year. There's no point in me making a video saying should you still buy it. It's more of just a revisit and a look back and some nostalgia, and I think that's something that a lot of people can resonate with. Anyway, with that all said and done, I've been Ryan Thomas. Please do like, dislike, comment and subscribe if you're new around here to never miss a video like this one. Also check out all my social media links that will be in the video description as always. And I'll give a massive shout out to my patrons. You guys are awesome. Thank you for your amazing continued support. I'll see you later. Peace.